Time is a fascinating concept, and we start talking about it and we start thinking it's supernatural, but we only experience time when there is a separation between 2 points of consciousness. So I am here in my present body and there is somebody else there, and I experience being separate from them. Because they are matter and I am matter, and my senses tell me that I am here and they are there. In the present moment I am here and I have my future, my dreams, and that future seems to be separate from me because I experience that time is linear. So where I am sitting here is 1 point of consciousness, and in the other room there is the toilet, or in another room there is the kitchen. So the moment I realize that I want to go to the kitchen, there is a separation between the 2 points of consciousness. So when I drag my body through space and go from 1 point of consciousness to another point of consciousness, I experience time in a linear way. So we are conditioned to believe that time is linear because we believe that we are bodies living in space and time. But it is not so at all. Quantum is a unified field. In the unified field there is no separation. Everything is connected in a realm beyond space and time. So in that realm there is no separation. So you have an infinite amount of time, and if you have an infinite amount of time, you have plenty of time to do whatever you want in the world. Infinite number of possibilities that exist in the infinite present moment, and suddenly time is reversed. In other words, when you move through time you experience gaps or dimensions. So the only way to move through time is not by moving faster from 1 point of consciousness to another. So it's not that we move our body. It has to do with frequency. So as you change your frequency you change your vibration. All frequencies carry information, and suddenly you experience another dimension, another reality, another possibility. In quantum physics there are an infinite number of them, and it is called the many worlds theory. There are only infinite possibilities. So I did my best to be able to describe the difference between space and time, between time and space. Then I started asking if I had a very deep mystical experience. I'm not talking about having a dream. I'm talking about having a complete sensory experience without your senses. Imagine that your senses are now heightened by 25%. Everything you see, hear, wear and feel. If your senses increase, your awareness of where you are also increases. Consciousness is awareness, so when there is a change in awareness there is a change in consciousness, and you cannot have consciousness without energy. So suddenly the brain starts processing higher frequencies and more energy. And so you experience that mystical moment. What is the biological system that can take information that doesn't come from your memory and turn it into such vivid images? Probably a few years ago I read an article that made me curious about this, and I came across a researcher, a biophysicist. A friend of mine and I were editorial advisors for a scientific journal, and he said you should look at this researcher. So I checked this researcher out, and this was one of the few rigorous researchers who had done such extensive work on the pineal gland. Each of these centers in our body are information centers. When you focus on your heart you will feel gratitude and love, your energy will expand and you will become more selfless. But when it comes to the pineal gland caught my attention because there was something so strange about it that I wanted to be able to put it together. It turns out that the pineal gland acts like a cosmic antenna that allows us to tune into different frequencies. Inside the pineal gland there are small crystals which are calcium carbonate crystals. They are called calcite crystals, and they are stacked on top of each other. And after this experience I found an article that said that the pineal gland is a neuroendocrine transducer with piezoelectric effects. Most people may not understand this, but basically piezoelectric means taking one form of energy and converting it into another form of energy. So when the crystals of the pineal gland are compressed, the compression of the crystals takes a mechanical stress and converts it into an electrical route. Then, suddenly activated by the electric charge, it starts to create a resonant electromagnetic field. So I thought about how we can compress the crystals of the pineal gland, and I modified the breathing exercises I learned from yoga a little bit and created a technique that allows us to breathe in this energy and draw this fluid into our spine and then squeeze our inner muscles. When we just hold the breath for a while, it starts to push the cerebrospinal fluid into the brain, and the pineal gland sits right behind the third ventricle, and the compression of the crystals by holding your breath and squeezing starts to activate the gland. So when the gland is suddenly activated, energy from lower centers in the body starts to be released into the brain and the brain goes into a gamma brain wave. As you know, I have been doing extensive scientific research in our advanced workshops for the last 5 years. We have conducted 19 advanced workshops. We have probably close to 10,000 brain scans, and now I know that when this energy starts to move, and when one is doing it properly, the image we see is the pineal gland and the area around it is very active. There is a lot of energy there, and the energy is not coming from something outside like the senses. There's a release of energy from the body to the brain. And when the brain fires, the whole limbic brain fires. Then the brain goes into high gamma brainwave patterns. So the person is literally super conscious. We've actually proven that this is the system that's happening at this point, and we have this system that activates when it's done properly. Then the person has a profound subjective experience, which we can say is probably very real because they can't make their brain do it. Right now in our research, the amount of energy that we are recapturing in the brain is 200 times the normal amount. There's so much energy in the brain that in 99.7% of the population it's 3 standard deviations above normal, or 3 standard deviations below normal. It's a bell curve that makes up almost 100% of the population. Imagine we get 200 and 300 standard deviations above normal, so we're talking about an enormous amount of energy. So we have proven that a hypothesis of the pineal gland is actually correct. And so I show specific brain scans in the book to show exactly what happens. It's a neuroendocrine transducer, and a transducer is something that takes one form of energy and translates it into another form of communication, just like our Skype call, where we take a frequency of the computer and translate it into a picture. Your television antenna takes a wave from the environment and translates it into a very coherent image. It acts as a transducer. It receives information from the realm beyond space and time, and these images are then converted into very powerful pictures. And it is the metabolites of the pineal gland that create such a deep inner vision, which is why they are called the third eye. You get an inner vision. This inner vision is mind-blowing, because it is so much bigger than anything you have ever experienced and more real than anything you have ever experienced in your past external environment. This experience enriches the brain because it produces a deep feeling. At that very moment, that person is creating a long-term memory. It sends a new emotional chemical energy signal to the body, and within a second we can say that the past is erased. And when they return to their senses, they feel as if the circuits in their brain are more properly tuned. Some of the conditioning about our limitation is removed. Because we have always had the circuits to perceive what is there, but we didn't have the wiring in our brain to perceive it. Because we perceive situations as we are, not as they are. So the brain becomes neurological and biological. The body gets a neurochemical genetic update, so you can see reality more clearly.